Princess Anne moved through the historic corridors of Windsor Castle with the quiet resolve that had defined her public life for decades. In St. George's Hall, where the family had gathered without prior announcement, she carried Queen Mary's laurel circlet herself, declining any attendant's assistance. This burden was hers alone to deliver. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, stood poised yet surprised as Anne approached and instructed her to kneel. The weight of years of service pressed upon Anne's shoulders as she placed the circlet upon Catherine's head. "Hold them together," she said with measured gravity, "when the rest of us no longer can." William observed silently, understanding the deeper implications. This was no constitutional shift, but a profound transfer of familial trust and responsibility, authorized quietly by King Charles days earlier. Camilla remained composed in the background, her hands clasped tightly, as the room absorbed the significance of this passing of guardianship. Princess Anne had embodied a rare form of steadfast service throughout her adult life, marked by an unwavering refusal to allow personal emotion to overshadow royal obligation. For decades, she had navigated the intricate demands of public representation and private mediation without seeking applause or concession. She confronted difficult relatives, upheld the exacting standards inherited from Queen Elizabeth, and maintained composure where others might have faltered under pressure. Her approach was never sentimental but grounded in disciplined action and clear judgment. In choosing this moment to transfer her role as the family's internal guardian, Anne demonstrated the same maturity that had defined her years of quiet authority. She recognized that her era of being the one who steadied disputes and defended institutional integrity was drawing to a close, not through weakness but through deliberate acknowledgement of changing realities. This decision reflected profound self-awareness, born of long experience observing the strengths and limitations within the family circle. Those familiar with royal history understood that Anne's commitment had never depended on public affection but on an internal code of duty that prioritized the monarchy's continuity above individual comfort. Windsor Castle provided a fitting backdrop of historical gravity for the proceedings. The chamber had long served as the setting for significant family milestones, its architecture and atmosphere lending weight to moments of transition. Anne entered unaccompanied, carrying the circlet with the quiet determination that had characterized her public appearances over many years. Catherine stood ready, though clearly unprepared for the full significance of what was unfolding, while William's presence offered silent support. King Charles observed from his seat, his demeanor reflecting the physical and emotional toll of recent challenges. Camilla maintained a composed exterior, yet the tension in her posture suggested deeper currents of adjustment. The ceremony itself remained brief and focused, avoiding elaborate fanfare in favor of authentic solemnity. This understated approach allowed the true meaning of the transfer to resonate more powerfully among those present, emphasizing substance over spectacle in a manner befitting mature reflection on leadership and legacy within the royal household. Catherine had carved her position within the royal family not through bold declarations, but through years of deliberate, thoughtful adaptation and inner strength that few outside her immediate circle fully appreciated. Arriving as someone from beyond the traditional aristocratic circles, she faced intense public scrutiny and private expectations, with a discipline that allowed her to observe carefully before speaking and to absorb pressures without letting them define or diminish her. She learned early the importance of listening more than asserting, of offering steady presence when others sought guidance amid uncertainty. Over time, younger members of the family began turning to her instinctively during moments of tension, finding in her responses a calm reliability that cut through confusion and provided clear direction without fanfare. Princess Anne had quietly observed these patterns across multiple occasions, noting how Catherine consistently prioritized the collective well-being of the family over personal spotlight or advantage. This path of quiet resilience had prepared her for greater responsibility in ways that formal training alone could not achieve. The circlet placed upon her head during the ceremony in St. George's Hall represented public recognition of this journey, affirming that true authority within the family often stems from demonstrated character forged in real circumstances rather than birthright alone. William, who had witnessed her growth most intimately, understood both her capacity and the personal costs such elevation would continue to demand, adding layers of complexity to their shared navigation of royal life. Princess Anne's legacy within the royal household extended far beyond any single ceremony or public appearance, rooted instead in decades of consistent, often unseen service that had helped hold the family together through periods of change and challenge. She had internalized the expectations set by Queen Elizabeth, transforming transforming them into a personal code that guided her handling of private disputes, her defense of institutional standards, and her willingness to confront difficult truths when others preferred avoidance. Anne rarely sought affection or acclaim for these efforts, preferring instead the satisfaction of duty fulfilled with integrity. In stepping forward to transfer her role as the family's internal guardian to Catherine, she confronted the natural conclusion of her own defining era with characteristic directness and grace. This decision was not born of fatigue, but of mature recognition that effective continuity required entrusting responsibilities to those best positioned to carry them forward. As she placed the circlet and spoke her charge, Anne embodied the very principles she had lived by, prioritizing the monarchy's long-term stability over personal attachment to her position. For those who had followed the royal family's history with attention, Anne's contribution stood as a model of steadfast stewardship, one that balanced tradition with pragmatic wisdom and left an indelible mark on how the House of Windsor manages its internal dynamics. The private gathering at Sandringham 5 months earlier had unfolded as a commemorative observance marking the anniversary of Queen Elizabeth's accession, yet it quickly revealed deeper vulnerabilities within the family structure. Tension had already settled over the occasion before lunch, as discussions regarding future responsibilities loomed in the background. When King Charles suddenly faltered amid his prepared remarks, dropping documents and losing his place, confusion threatened to spread rapidly among those present. In that critical moment, Catherine acted with instinctive composure, guiding younger family members away from the immediate scene, assigning clear and calming tasks to those nearby, and ensuring that medical attention could be summoned with appropriate discretion. Her interventions prevented a private family matter from escalating into wider alarm or loss of dignity. Princess Anne observed this sequence closely, struck by the contrast between Catherine's focused care and other responses shaped more by protocol or personal concern. Camilla later challenged Catherine's assumption of direction in the library, questioning the boundaries of initiative, but the episode left a lasting impression on Anne regarding who could effectively steady the family when formal structures proved insufficient. This Sandringham turning point became the catalyst for Anne's subsequent deliberations and preparations for the formal transfer of guardianship, highlighting the practical value of leadership rooted in genuine concern rather than rank or assertion. The closed-door meeting at Clarence House 3 weeks before the ceremony brought Princess Anne and Queen Camilla into direct conversation about the proposed transfer of family responsibilities. With the draft declaration resting on the table between them and no aides present to soften the exchange, Camilla voiced the profound wound of feeling excluded from greater influence despite her unwavering loyalty to King Charles. Anne responded with her customary straightforwardness, underlining key phrases in the document while explaining that authentic leadership required creating environments where family members felt safe enough to express disagreement without fear of repercussions. Their discussion touched upon years of accumulated sensitivities regarding trust, belonging, and the limits of formal authority in shaping personal loyalties. Camilla articulated fears that past perceptions would forever constrain her role within the family, regardless of time or sacrifice, while Anne acknowledged the emotional reality without retreating from her conviction based on observed actions. The conversation, though marked by evident pain on both sides, exemplified the difficult but necessary navigation of differing perspectives among individuals, bound by both personal ties and institutional obligations. It laid bare the complex human realities that accompany significant shifts in family dynamics, and underscored Anne's determination to proceed with what she believed served the broader interests of unity. King Charles sat alone in the quiet confines of his private study at Buckingham Palace, the 2-page declaration before him carrying a gravity that far exceeded its modest length. He had signed countless state papers and royal warrants over the years, yet this particular document felt profoundly different. It did not strip him of authority, but compelled an honest admission that his command had limits, particularly in fostering the emotional closeness the family required during times of strain. As he read the proposal allowing Catherine to coordinate senior gatherings, guide younger working royals, unify charitable initiatives, and advise William in private disputes, Charles paused at the passage concerning Anne's symbolic crowning. Removing his glasses, he stared at a nearby photograph of his mother, Queen Elizabeth, remembering how often she had turned to Anne when loyalty fractured and arguments grew dangerous. The words he whispered to the empty room brought some comfort, yet they also carried the sting of personal acknowledgement that his own efforts had not achieved the same unity. When Camilla entered and sensed the weight upon him, Charles covered the paper instinctively instinctively before explaining that some decisions are shaped by circumstances long before any signature confirms them. He rejected any framing of the choice as favoring one woman over another, instead emphasizing that the family had already turned to Catherine in moments of fear. The inclusion of a confidential clause requiring reconciliation efforts before any exclusion from decisions reflected his prudent desire to prevent the new role from becoming a source of division. With a heavy heart and steady hand, Charles signed, sliding the declaration toward Anne with the understanding that this act, though necessary for the family's survival, marked a profound personal concession. The sealed invitations, lacking any royal crest on the exterior, carried a sentence that fundamentally altered the internal balance of power. Princess Anne would relinquish her role as senior family guardian and invest Catherine with that responsibility. Reactions varied sharply across the household. Edward and Sophie accepted without hesitation, recognizing the wisdom in Anne's assessment. Younger relatives expressed quiet relief at the prospect of clearer guidance. However, senior figures began calculating the implications for access, precedence, and influence. Prince Andrew's response was the most visceral. He tore the invitation and declared he would not attend a ceremony granting moral authority to someone younger. Catherine, learning of this at Kensington Palace, felt physically ill at the thought of Anne's farewell being overshadowed by conflict and immediately offered to surrender the role. William moved a chair close to hers, insisting that yielding would only prove that external pressure still dictated family outcomes. Anne, prepared for resistance, sent a handwritten note to Andrew reminding him that attendance represented respect for Queen Elizabeth's belief in duty transcending resentment. Catherine followed with a direct telephone call, speaking not of threats or royal commands, but simply of Anne's deserving to witness the family united one final time. After a long silence, Andrew agreed to attend, though he warned he would neither kneel nor applaud. This negotiated resolution, achieved through patience and respect rather than force, validated Anne's judgment in the very moment others sought to undermine it. On the eve of the ceremony, as twilight settled over Windsor, Catherine entered a private sitting room expecting one final briefing filled with protocol and formal instructions. What unfolded instead was something far more profound and human. Princess Anne dismissed every attendant with quiet authority, closed the folder of notes that lay between them, and poured 2 cups of tea with her own hands, an act of simple intimacy that spoke volumes. There were no officials present, no husbands to mediate, and no witnesses to shape the conversation. For the first time in their long acquaintance, the Princess Royal spoke not as Charles's sister or the embodiment of royal duty, but as a woman who had carried the invisible weight of protecting her family for decades. She kept the historic circlet inside its dark case on the table, a silent reminder of what was being passed on. Anne reflected candidly on the personal toll her lifelong code had exacted, the private pains she had never allowed to surface in public, the quiet isolation of being the one who confronted relatives others feared to challenge, and the identity she had built around being indispensable. Catherine listened with the same attentive grace that had earned her this trust, occasionally offering a steadying hand when Anne's voice wavered with emotion. The exchange transcended rank and ceremony, becoming a genuine passing of wisdom between 2 women who understood the unique pressures and sacrifices demanded by their positions. Anne's vulnerability in that moment humanized the entire transfer, strengthening Catherine's resolve while honoring the depth of service that had defined her aunt's life. It was a farewell laced with mutual respect, quiet sorrow, and measured hope for the future of the family they both loved. Prince William's private concerns ran deeper than the composed facade he presented to the world. In the quiet chamber before they entered St. George's Hall, he stood beside Catherine, his fingers repeatedly adjusting his cufflinks in a small but telling betrayal of inner anxiety. He had watched his wife endure years of intense public judgment, relentless adaptation, and hidden emotional strain with a discipline few could match. Yet the expanded responsibilities she was about to assume weighed heavily upon him as a husband who knew the personal cost better than most. When Catherine turned to him and asked whether he truly believed she could carry this new burden, William's affirmation came too quickly, followed by a tender grasp of her hand that conveyed both love and an unspoken apology for the weight his words placed upon her shoulders. Part of him longed to shield her from additional pressure, to pull her away from the relentless demands of royal life, while another part recognized that no one of their generation commanded the same instinctive trust from the family. His quiet concerns revealed the deeply human tension that exists even within the most privileged lives, the constant balance between personal protectiveness and the unyielding call of public duty. Throughout the ceremony, ceremony and beyond, William's steady, supportive presence provided Catherine with essential emotional anchorage, demonstrating the strength of a partnership forged through shared trials, mutual understanding, and quiet resilience. Queen Camilla carried complex emotions beneath her characteristic composure during the events leading to and including the ceremony. She had long expected her devotion to King Charles and her position as consort to afford her greater influence over family gatherings and private loyalties. Instead, Catherine's elevation positioned another woman at the heart of reconciliation, emotional support, and unity for the younger generation. Earlier, in a narrow corridor moments before the ceremony, Camilla had confronted Anne directly, asking whether the crown had decided she was incapable of holding the family together. Anne's measured response, that the decision concerned trust rather than rank, had wounded her more deeply than open anger ever could. Camilla remembered vividly how, during the crisis at Sandringham, she had looked toward exits and staff while Catherine had focused on calming frightened family members. Sitting with a bracelet Charles had given her in the silence afterward, Camilla confronted the painful truth that no title, no number of years, and no personal sacrifice seemed capable of fully erasing the family's old suspicions. Her complex emotions encompassed genuine love for her husband, sharp awareness of her outsider status, and the mature recognition that she must now navigate a changed reality with dignity. This internal reckoning added another layered dimension to the human drama unfolding within the House of Windsor. The symbolism and historical depth of the laurel circlet elevated the ceremony far beyond a simple transfer of title. This ceremonial band, once belonging to Queen Mary, had been used across generations to mark moments of personal honor and quiet investiture rather than constitutional power. Anne's insistence on carrying it herself, refusing any equerry, underscored the profoundly personal nature of her final act. When the circlet touched Catherine's head, it connected the present moment to a long line of royal women who had borne similar invisible burdens with varying degrees of public recognition. For Anne, the gesture represented the voluntary surrender of an identity that had defined much of her adult life, the role of protector and guardian she had performed with unyielding discipline. For Catherine, it affirmed years of quiet resilience and adaptation that had transformed her from outsider to trusted emotional center. The historical depth of the object enriched every aspect of the occasion, reminding those present that the monarchy's true strength lies not merely in pageantry, but in the continuity of character, service, and thoughtful stewardship passed from one generation to the next. This layering of symbolism gave the ceremony lasting resonance. King Charles's reflections on governance during this period revealed a monarch deeply aware of both the power and the limitations of his position. Alone in his study, he read the declaration with careful attention, understanding that his signature would not remove his authority but would force an honest acknowledgement of its boundaries in matters of family closeness and emotional leadership. He recalled how often his mother had relied upon Anne when arguments became dangerous and loyalties began to fracture. These memories brought comfort, yet also a sense of personal humility. When Camilla questioned whether he was choosing his daughter-in-law over his queen, Charles responded that he was not choosing between two women, but recognizing the person the family already sought in moments of fear. The confidential clause, he added, requiring reconciliation before any exclusion, reflected prudent governance aimed at preventing new divisions. His reflections illustrated the profound responsibility of balancing constitutional duty with paternal concern, a challenge that had defined much of his reign. By signing the document and entrusting Anne with its delivery, Charles demonstrated the mature wisdom that sometimes the greatest acts of leadership involve knowing when to distribute responsibility for the greater good of the institution and the family it serves. Prince Andrew's reluctant participation tested the limits of family diplomacy and the strength of Anne's final request. His initial reaction was one of open anger, tearing the invitation and sending word that he would not attend a ceremony granting moral authority to a relative younger than himself. Catherine, upon hearing this, felt sickened rather than furious, and immediately offered to step back to avoid humiliating her aunt's farewell. William counseled her firmly against yielding to pressure. Anne, anticipating resistance, had prepared a handwritten note reminding Andrew that attendance was an act of respect toward Queen Elizabeth's belief that duty must survive resentment. Catherine followed with a personal telephone call, speaking without threats or commands, simply appealing to the dignity of allowing Anne to see the family united one last time. After several seconds of silence, Andrew agreed to attend, though he warned he would neither kneel, applaud, nor pretend approval. This negotiated resolution, a achieved through patience and respect rather than force, prevented the occasion from becoming a battlefield and proved Catherine's diplomatic capabilities in the very moment others tried to undermine them. The broader implications for unity within the royal family extended well beyond the walls of St. George's Hall. Catherine's new role as the central point of guidance for younger members, coordinator of charitable efforts, and emotional anchor during crises offered a practical mechanism for addressing long-standing divisions. It acknowledged that trust had already shifted informally and sought to formalize it for greater stability. The decision carried significance for how the monarchy presents itself publicly as well, a thoughtful adaptation that balances tradition with contemporary needs for authenticity and resilience. For the family, it meant a more distributed form of leadership better suited to navigating modern challenges while preserving core values of service and continuity. The broader implications also touched upon the delicate interplay between individual roles and collective harmony, demonstrating that unity is not achieved through rigid hierarchy alone, but through the careful cultivation of relationships grounded in demonstrated character and mutual respect. The lessons from past crises, most notably the incident at Sandringham, had been carefully absorbed and applied in the lead-up to the ceremony. When King Charles faltered and confusion threatened to spread, Catherine's calm, decisive actions had prevented panic and preserved dignity. Anne had studied these moments closely, noting how Catherine looked toward frightened family members while others focused on protocol or potential exposure. These experiences taught valuable lessons about the qualities that best serve stability when formal structures falter: instinctive care, clear direction, and prioritization of collective well-being over personal or positional concerns. The family had learned through such episodes that trust is earned through consistent behavior in difficult times rather than demanded through title. These accumulated insights informed Anne's recommendation, Charles's approval, and the entire framework of the transfer, demonstrating a mature institutional capacity to learn from adversity and channel those lessons toward greater future resilience. Forward into an uncertain future, the royal family now moved with a reconfigured structure of internal leadership and support. Catherine assumed her responsibilities with the thoughtfulness and gravity honed through years of quiet resilience. She was supported by William's steadfast partnership and the formal framework established through King Charles's authorization. Princess Anne's gradual withdrawal from active guardianship allowed her to reflect on a lifetime of dedicated service while empowering the next generation to step forward. The path ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, some public, some deeply private, that would test this arrangement. Yet the foundation laid through careful observation, difficult conversations, and deliberate transition provided reason for cautious optimism. The family's ability to navigate this change with dignity suggested a resilience capable of sustaining them through whatever uncertainties the future might hold, always striving to balance cherished tradition with the pragmatic wisdom demanded by contemporary realities. The human dimension of royal life was powerfully evident throughout the entire process surrounding the ceremony. Behind the historic setting, the symbolic circlet, and the formal proceedings lay deeply personal experiences. Anne's reluctant farewell to a role that had defined her identity, Camilla's painful adjustment to shifting dynamics of trust, Charles's heavy acknowledgement of personal limitations, Catherine's acceptance of expanded burdens, and William's protective concerns as a husband. Each individual carried years of loyalty, resentment, fear, hope, and quiet sacrifice into St. George's Hall. These human realities, vulnerability beneath duty, love intertwined with obligation, pain coexisting with resolve, remind us that even the most structured and tradition-bound institutions are ultimately composed of individuals navigating complex emotions and relationships. Recognizing this dimension adds authenticity and depth to public understanding of the monarchy, highlighting that true strength often resides in the courage to confront personal costs while fulfilling larger responsibilities to family and institution. Princess Anne's final public act of investing Catherine with the role of family guardian ensures an enduring legacy of thoughtful stewardship for the House of Windsor. By entrusting this responsibility based on years of observed character, quiet resilience, and instinctive leadership rather than rank alone, Anne reinforced fundamental principles that had guided her own service. The ceremony, though brief in duration, represented the culmination of careful observation, difficult conversations, and mature decision-making involving multiple generations. King Charles's authorization, William's support, and Catherine's acceptance all contributed to a transition that prioritized long-term family unity over individual individual comfort or convenience. As the monarchy continues its journey through an evolving world, this moment stands as a testament to the power of foresight, earned trust, and the willingness to adapt while honoring tradition. Anne's legacy, like that of Queen Elizabeth before her, lies not only in what she accomplished during her years of service, but in how thoughtfully she prepared the path for those who follow, ensuring the House of Windsor remains anchored in duty, dignity, and genuine human connection for generations yet to come.